I was doing some thinking today, and this is something that I've known for a long time and that I'm fine with, and that is that I don't really fit in with this world. And not only am I okay with that, but I want it that way. This world is a very strange place, ladies and gentlemen, and many people will never really grasp this because a lot of people are comfortable with the way things are. And I've made peace with that, and that's fine, but I personally think it is a very backwards thing to become comfortable in a world like this. There are a lot of things out of alignment, and in no way, shape, or form is it my intention to be a pessimist. I'm just being honest about what's actually going on here, and honesty is not pessimism. Honesty is just honesty, and it's a very unnoble thing, in my opinion, to pull a blanket over your head and just pretend that things are okay, just to try in some feeble attempt to make things more comfortable for you while you exist here in this dimension. I approach things from an alchemical perspective because I view myself as an alchemist. I practice alchemy constantly. And due to my views about alchemy and due to what alchemy is and due to the fact that I practice alchemy, I am constantly looking to take things not only in myself and make them better, but things in the world around me to make better. And this is an alchemical just treasure chest here, this world, ladies and gentlemen, because there's so many things that need to be changed for the better. In alchemy, we practice something called transmutation. Transmutation is a practice or a procedure or a undertaking where the alchemist takes things and turns them into better things. This starts with one's own psyche, one's own emotional field, one's own health, and after the alchemist gets his or her situation in line and in alignment, he or she uses his or her perfected state of being to affect the world in a beneficial way, thereby creating positive change outside of his or herself so that the collective, the whole, can benefit from his or her wisdom, not just the alchemist. I hope that makes sense. But I do not fit in with this world, and I wouldn't want to, because this world is, we exist in a mind-controlled state, ladies and gentlemen. I repeat this often because it is oh so true. We exist in a mind-controlled state. If the average person could just, even for a brief moment, feel what it's like to be inside of a body when the Kundalini is moving through it. If the average person could experience just for a brief second what the consciousness is like when an individual is experiencing Kundalini, also known as enlightenment, he or she would understand what I'm saying when I say that we exist in a mind-controlled state. We were designed to be in a completely different state of consciousness than we currently are. We exist in a state of consciousness, ladies and gentlemen, where our senses have been terraformed and programmed to only take in a very specific amount of information that has been predetermined for our senses. I mentioned this in a recent video where I talked about the assemblage point and how the assemblage point and its position in our energetic field dictates how we perceive the world. And the matrix, to a large extent, seeks to keep your assemblage point in a very fixed location. The matrix, ladies and gentlemen, how do you think the matrix operates? Why do you think it exists? The matrix seeks to keep you mind-controlled. It seeks to keep you in a very, very specific bandwidth of energy whereby you can only take in a very, very small fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum that they've turned your senses. They've taken your senses and turned the dial way down, and now you can only use about 1% of the potential of your senses to take in information from the electromagnetic spectrum. Hope that makes sense. Now they do this, the matrix does this by moving your assemblage point to a different position in your energetic field. And the position that they move your assemblage point to creates what we see or experience now as modern consciousness, typical day-to-day life for the average person, where they're only existing in a small fraction of their potential, while at the same time thinking that that's pretty much all there is to life. That's how the programming works. It ensnares you, conditions and controls your senses to only be able to take in a small fraction of their potential. It keeps your mind in a very narrow bandwidth of consciousness, whereby you can only understand very basic things. You can't, perceive things outside of your conditioning. And at the same time, it makes you think that that's just the normal thing. That's just what life is. The mind control is ingenious because not only does it take over who you are like a body snatcher, but it makes you believe that what you're experiencing as reality or consciousness is all that there is, and it's like the greatest thing ever. No, ladies and gentlemen, you exist within a framework of consciousness where you're exhibiting 1% of your potential, and you think that that's great? You think that's great because you don't know that there's anything beyond what you're currently experiencing. And that's how the mind control works. So the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen, to a large extent, the majority of how it controls you is by how it controls your aura, your energy field, your energetic luminescent cocoon, as Don Juan Matus would call it, the Yaqui Indian sorcerer in Carlos Castaneda's books. The Matrix controls you by manipulating your energy field. Because your energy field, or your aura, your subtle organizing energy fields, dictate how you perceive reality. So there's a point in your aura, or in your energy field, ladies and gentlemen, which I call the auric shield. It's a literal shield, but most of us, we have a weakened shield, to say the least. Most of it's not even a shield anymore. It's a bunch of holes, like a colander. It's besides the point. But there's a point in your energy field known as the assemblage point. And the assemblage point, ladies and gentlemen, takes in information from the outside world and funnels it through your energy field, and takes energy and condenses it into a more purified state of energy, and then feeds that into your consciousness, feeds that into your body, feeds that into your soul. And that information that you take in creates your perception. There is so much more that could be said about the assemblage point, and I hope that what I'm saying makes sense. Read The Art of Dreaming by Carlos Castaneda. That is a great book to read to familiarize yourself with the assemblage point. But basically, we have an energy field, and we have within that overall energy field, the makeup of it, if you will, there's various parts. One of the most crucial parts to our energy field is something known as the assemblage point. Now, the assemblage point takes in energy from the world outside of our energy field, our aura, and funnels it through the assemblage point and injects it into our personal sphere. I hope that makes sense. So basically, imagine it like this, ladies and gentlemen. We humans have an energy field around us. Imagine it as a giant sphere. Now, that sphere is like an onion because our energy field has multiple different layers of energy. These energy fields control and regulate the health of our organs, our inner mind, our soul. It's how we navigate through this dimension, and it's also connected to our soul when we pass over or pass away. Our energy field is what allows us to transition. That's besides the point. Now, to get back to my example, we have an energy field around us that I want you to imagine as a giant ball around you. Now, a part of that energy field is something known as your assemblage point. And I want you to imagine that as a ball about an arm's length behind your right shoulder blade. Just imagine a ball the size of, let's just imagine a tennis ball. So you have a giant energy field around you, a circular energy field, and within that energy field you have a small ball about an arm's length behind your right shoulder. In that point behind your right shoulder, let me just kind of dovetail something into this. We exist, ladies and gentlemen, and excuse me for having to break this conversation up into a bunch of little parts, but I'm trying to convey multiple things at once, so bear with me. We exist in a world where we have an energy shield around us. Every single one of us does, ladies and gentlemen. Now, outside of that energy shield, and our body is encapsulated in that shield, kind of like we're like the yolk. Our body is like the yolk inside of an egg, the egg being the energy shield. Outside of our personal egg, there is a giant energy field of various filaments, fibers, God particles in different energy there's a geometric grid, ladies and gentlemen, of consciousness and spirit that holds everything in this dimension together. It's like the scaffolding of matter, if you will. And this geometric grid is composed of various conscious filaments and fibers in different geometric patterns that are all conscious of themselves. This is what's known as the energetic sea. This is what's known by John Kreider as the dark sea. Now, I don't think John Kreider in any of his books has ever explained what this field looks like. He just describes it as energy. But I've actually had what Carlos Castaneda calls the eagle's vision. And I believe he talks about this in his book, The Eagle's Gift. The eagle's vision is a term that the sorcerers would use to describe a sorcerer who was given the ability for brief periods of time to see the energetic sea, which is a giant, infinite grid that expands in all directions, ladies and gentlemen, of various fibers and sacred geometrical. How would I explain this? It's really difficult to explain. This grid around us, ladies and gentlemen, is composed of various different geometric patterns it's sacred geometry. It's an infinite lattice work of sacred geometry that goes in every direction just infinitely. And all of these geometric patterns that encapsulate this dimension or that are holding this dimension together, that cross over each other. It's an infinite grid of mathematics that are perfect. All of these lines, ladies and gentlemen, this grid is conscious of itself. Let's put it that way. Now, I'm trying to explain something here, and it's proving to be rather difficult. But your eyes can no longer perceive that. Our senses have been conditioned. We only take in a small fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. We can only see a very minimal amount of the truth. Now, in a state of Christ consciousness or illumination or gnosis or enlightenment, the Buddha or the truth seeker, whatever, is brought up to speed with the truth and is able to see this infinite grid of consciousness holding everything together. This is how we were designed to live, ladies and gentlemen. We were supposed to be able to see the truth around us. But due to the positioning of our assemblage point, we no longer see any of the geometry holding everything together. We no longer see the auras of plants, animals, ourselves, you name it. We no longer see any of this. We can't even sense it. And that's due to the positioning of our assemblage point, because our assemblage point is a part of our energetic field that dictates how our perception operates and what we can see and what we can't see. So I really want to try to explain the energetic grid, what I call the God grid, but it's rather difficult without drawing it. So I'm going to try to do my best to draw what this grid looks like. A great demonstration in visual format would be to watch the end of the Tool song Parabola. After the Kundalini energy in that music video moves up the individual's spine, he or she is brought into the realm of the ancestors, and he merges with the energetic filaments of the God grid. That God grid is literally everywhere in this matrix. It's connecting everything and holding everything together. We no longer can see that. And when we can see it, we're at one with Source because we're witnessing the Source. The Source operates around us at all times. We can just no longer perceive it or even see it. Now, these filaments and fibers that create this energetic grid around us of geometry, of sacred geometry, these fibers are all conscious of one another. It's a remarkable thing to witness, and it will drive the average person insane to witness it with his or her own eyes and his or her own senses. For one, because you have to be in a very specific state of consciousness to even be able to witness this stuff, and that state of consciousness, or the Kundalini energy, is highly disassociating to the average mind because it burns through the ego and it brings you up to speed with the truth. And that can be very disassociating after the experience wears off to come back into the matrix and have to deal with all the bullshit here. I hope that makes sense. The average person, to witness these states of consciousness, to witness the truth of this reality, of his or her energy field, of the energy field that makes up the entire universe, would drive the average person insane to witness these things, because it completely contradicts everything that you believe to be true. It completely melts through your egotistical belief systems that you've developed about who you are and what your purpose is and what reality is and this and that. It's insane how programmed we are. It's also insane that to be brought up to speed with the truth will drive the average person insane. It just will. To actually see and witness what's actually going on here. And there's people who claim to, I've seen all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. I meditated and, I saw it in my mind's eye. No, ladies and gentlemen, you experience these states of consciousness. You experience and interact with the God grid when the Kundalini energy moves through your system. And it brings up your neurons and all of your physiological parts. It brings everything up to speed. And you now can see everything. Just imagining that something's there, like so many of these gurus do, and pretend, I can see all this stuff all the time and all this other nonsense. No, they can't. In order for you to be able to see this grid of consciousness that I'm talking about, it requires you to be in a very specific state of consciousness. And the people who are claiming to be in these states of consciousness clearly are not. Because if you were in these states of consciousness, ladies and gentlemen, you'd be able to perform miracles. You'd be able to do a whole host of things that you currently cannot do. So a lot of people out here are charlatans. A lot of people out here are total charlatans. But there are indeed people in this world, and I'm not claiming to be one, that can indeed see the energy fields and whatnot. I've witnessed them. I've been put into states of consciousness where I was allowed to see them and interact with them, but I am currently not in those states of consciousness, and I want to make that clear. Now, getting back to my example briefly, I'm going to try to exemplify something here. We have an energetic grid around us, which is our aura. We have an assemblage point, which is part of our aura, if you will, and then outside of our aura is the energetic grid of consciousness that I was just talking about, the energetic ocean, the vast infinite grid of God particles and fibers and living filaments that make up and hold. It's a geometric pattern that holds everything together. It's the scaffolding of matter. Our aura interacts with that field of consciousness and feeds information from that field of consciousness in through our aura into the assemblage point. And I really want to hit home with this. I want to make this clear. Our energy field, or our aura, has an assemblage point in it. And outside of our aura exists the energetic sea, which is, as I mentioned, the infinite grid of living consciousness. It's a giant geometric grid of particles and fibers that are aware of one another. It's the God grid, I call it. Our aura interacts with that God grid and sends information in through our aura into our assemblage point. That information is diffused through our assemblage point and fed into our soul, fed into our spirit, fed into our consciousness, fed into our physical body, our organs, our perceptions. And this energy and how it's diffused dictates, ladies and gentlemen, how our perception is steered, how we see the world. Now, our assemblage point, due to its current position, takes in filaments and energy from the God grid in a very specific manner that is very limited. Now, when the assemblage point moves to a different position, it starts siphoning in different forms of conscious information from the God grid, and it feeds that information into our soul, into our body, into our mind, into our organs, and suddenly we see the world much differently because we're taking in new bandwidths and amounts of energy from a different point on the assemblage point. I hope this makes sense. So what I'm getting at, ladies and gentlemen, is that by keeping the assemblage point of our energetic field in a specific location, the Matrix has managed to dictate how our energy fields interact with the God grid. And by doing that, they've dictated how our perception works, because perception is largely steered by how our assemblage point and our energy field interacts with and makes love with, if you will, the energy field around our own aura. So our aura is connected to the God grid, but based on the location of our assemblage point, it dictates how the God grid interacts with our aura and feeds in information into our minds, which creates perception. So again, based on the location, the current location of the collective positioning of our assemblage point, we see the world in a very narrow backwards, fucked up way, if you will, where we only take in very specific pieces of information from the God grid and turn it into what we view as the world. This is a very real thing and something that I really want to do my best to hit home with, because this really exemplifies how mind control works, ladies and gentlemen. Your assemblage point in your aura is the key to health. Your assemblage point in your aura is the key to immortality and the key to all of that mystical stuff that has been hidden from us, ladies and gentlemen. We exist in a world where we have an energy field that is supposed to be completely online and working properly, and they've taken it, and it's just the con job that we've had done to us is just... I am bewildered. And that's why at the beginning of this video, ladies and gentlemen, I said that, I don't fit in with this world, and I don't want to fit in with this world, because this world... have you ever looked at what they do to these animals in these factory farms? Have you ever looked at how they treat animals, not only in the United States, but, in certain parts of the world where they eat dogs and they have these festivals and they literally in the streets just beat dogs to death continually and stomp on their heads while they're alive? Have you ever witnessed the hell here in this world? Have you seen what goes on, or do you still live in this conditioned little bubble where you've been happily programmed like Cypher in the Matrix to just live in this incredibly narrow bandwidth of consciousness where you act like you know everything, while at the same time you only exist in a tiniest fraction of your potential? How can you be sure of yourself? How can you be making rational decisions? How can you act like you know everything when you exist in a state of consciousness that is totally programmed and only exhibits 1% of your potential, far less than 1%? Giving humanity 1% is giving them way too much credit. The average human exists on far less than 1% of their potential. They say that we only use about they say we only use about 10 to 20% of our brains. Ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, based on my experiences, we use far less than 1% of our brain. It's embarrassing how far we've fallen. It's absolutely embarrassing, and it's difficult for me to really hit home with a lot of people, because a lot of people think that the things that I'm talking about are just made up, or that, they might, our aura might exist, blah, blah, blah. These things might exist. I don't know. It's hard for people to believe in things that they've never experienced. And a lot of you guys have probably experienced the energy fields and whatnot. So, man, I'm going in a million different directions at once. So bear with me here, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm trying to say is, most people have to have concrete evidence to even entertain the idea that something's real. So a lot of the things that I talk about, like the assemblage point, a lot of the things I talk about, like the energy fields, most people will just write them off as nonsense or spiritual hoo-ha because they've never experienced them. This is one of the ways that the assemblage point works. The assemblage point works, ladies and gentlemen, the Matrix has created a very specific positioning on the collective assemblage point of our energy fields to keep you from ever looking beyond where its location keeps your perception steered towards. I hope that makes sense. So due to the current positioning on most humans' assemblage points and how their energetic field, their aura has been tuned a certain way, they can only react and perceive things in the world based on how their energy field has been tuned. And the way that their energy field has been tuned is a very suboptimal tuning. It's a very suboptimal tuning. The average person's energy field is like a very old TV that has like one channel that barely works. It just doesn't work properly. Whereas the enlightened human being, the enlightened energy field is like a brand new plasma TV with like hundreds of thousands of little crystals in it and shit. I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with an explanation here, or a metaphor. We've got to change. This is a nightmare scenario here, ladies and gentlemen, and many people can't see it due to their programming. That's fucking frightening to me. That the average person will go through their life just walking around this matrix, shuffling through the matrix, never trying to lift their head never trying to lift their consciousness into better and more refined states of being. Transmutation, again, is the modus operandi of the alchemist. And a lot of people will go the majority of their lives never improving themselves. And I don't need to hear any bullshit. People saying, oh, you're judging people. You shouldn't judge people. Just worry about yourself. No, I worry about other people because other people are the people around me are the ones making the decisions that largely impact my well-being, that largely impact the well-being of this amazing dimension and the animals that are living here. This is an insane situation. The average person has is turned into a literal zombie, folks. Can you not see it? And if you can't see it, it's because your energy field, your mind control, and the positioning on your assemblage point is keeping you from being able to see the truth. And how sad is that? You want to start moving your assemblage point? Start working on lucid dreaming. Start doing the pentagram rituals that I talk about. Start doing the motionlessness exercises where you try to sit for 5 minutes without moving. That will agitate a huge response in your assemblage point. The mind and the body will become highly irritated because it wants because the ego wants the mind and the body to stay fixed in a very specific location. When you sit motionless, ladies and gentlemen, and you calm your mind and you try to not move and you start doing the relaxation exercises, you throw a huge bone in the programming of your assemblage point and you start to break free the shackles of its positioning. Whether you believe that or not, health, ladies and gentlemen, is much more than just taking care of your body with food. It's about doing these exercises. It's about realizing that there's a whole level of mind control here that is keeping us from being who we were designed to be. And in through acknowledging that, we can start to take steps towards achieving more of our personal power. We were never designed to have to live these disgusting lives, these backwards lives of stress, of all this nonsensical work. And on top of that, again, I want to stay focused on what I was originally ranting on or about here in this video, which is the state of affairs here in this world. Wow, have things gotten insane. And again, you may not think that. You may think everything's fine because you have your little family and you have your car payment and all this other shit, and you have a nice 9-to-5 job, and you don't perceive any threat in the world around you. But the reality here, ladies and gentlemen, is that there is so much suffering going on in this world that it would make the average person's head spin if they actually witnessed it. The animal abuse alone is just exponential. Exponential. I am amazed at how people treat animals. I am amazed at how other people treat other people. I am amazed at how stupid people have become. And I don't care if people have a goddamn problem with me saying that. The truth is the truth, regardless of how much sugar you want to put on it, ladies and gentlemen. What we've done, not only to ourselves, but the other species here in this world, is deplorable and shameful and disgusting. It is not the type of work that you'd see on the resume of a supreme being. Something has got to change. We have got to take our power back. And we do that not just through diet, like all these online gurus talk about. Oh, you're going to eat and you're going to become enlightened and all this other shit. No, that's part of it. We need to take our power back by realizing that our energy field has been put in a very specific position that is keeping our range of frequencies that we can perceive in a very specific, fixed, programmed location that keeps us in a very fixed, programmed state of consciousness where we can only take in a very small fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum and all the other hidden layers around us. When we move our assemblage point and we start taking in new filaments from the energetic ocean, the God grid, our perception largely changes and we start to take in more information. When we start to take in more information, we can start to see all of the things and feel all the things that we couldn't feel when we were in a very fixed state of consciousness. This is a remarkably beautiful thing to witness, to experience. And again, I highly recommend reading Carlos Castaneda's books, especially The Art of Dreaming and The Teachings of Don Juan, which is an incredible book, to familiarize yourself with some of these concepts. I don't think Don Juan talks about the assemblage point in The Teachings of Don Juan, though. but he does in The Art of Dreaming and The Eagle's Gift, I believe. But it is a remarkable thing to experience. It makes you very humble to realize that God has been around you this whole time. There's a vast, infinite, conscious labyrinth of living fibers and filaments that are incredibly... no words can express, ladies and gentlemen, how beautiful these states of consciousness are. And to some of you, I might sound like a damn fool, because unfortunately, I don't know how to explain these states of consciousness with the English language. I do my best to do it, but I don't really know how to completely describe these beautiful, incredible, arcane, mystical states of consciousness where you can come into contact with the truth. Just the energy field around a tree is enough to make you weep because of its beauty. But we can't see those anymore, can we? No, because work's too important. I'm not saying that work is not important. We shouldn't strive to make money, but when work defines you and you exist in a world where you go your whole life never experiencing the truth of this dimension that you live in, that's a huge problem. Or is it the meaning of life to come into these, incredible dimensions and just kind of slip through and go through the motions and only experience 1% of your potential? Is that the goal of life? Is that the meaning of life? To me, it's not. And that's because I'm an alchemical creature. I'm constantly looking for ways to transmute myself, ladies and gentlemen, to transmute my mind, to purge myself. Do you have any clue how much work I've done on my mind? Do you have any clue how much work I've done in my inner temple, just deleting old garbage? We have all got to start doing this. There is so much stuff hidden that we've repressed and stored in the deepest caverns of our mind. And unless you go digging, unless you turn the lights on, metaphorically speaking, in your inner mind and try to improve yourself, you're never going to become aware of these complexes and these accumulated forms of baggage that we have mentally and emotionally and on the subconscious level. We purge ourselves through utilizing the full body relaxation protocols, the inner temple protocol. We go into our mind, contact our power source, ask our power source how we can improve our lives, and we respond. We wait for the message and we respond and we make those changes. I have a video here on the inner temple exercise on the Patreon page. It's about 30 minutes. It's a simple exercise. Do it frequently. Do it often. It will improve your life. Read Philip Cooper's books. He talks about the inner temple often in those books. It's basically a way to contact your subconscious mind and contact the four elements: air, fire, water, and earth. The effect that contacting these elements can have on your subconscious mind and on your soul is profound. I'm talking about pure, raw, powerful, transformative power. Through alchemy, ladies and gentlemen, we can start working on moving our assemblage points back to a more normal position, because the position that they're currently in right now is not normal. It's a fixed state that dictates how our energy field works with and is connected to the God grid around us. So I want to make that really clear how that works. There's a giant grid of consciousness around us that's conscious of itself. It's basically a geometric grid of overlapping sacred geometric patterns that binds and holds everything together. We exist in this energetic grid, and around our bodies we have a luminous egg, as Don Juan calls it. For me personally, when I experienced my aura, it was more of a circle. And a beautiful gem-like sphere that had multiple different layers that communicated with me. It talked. It was remarkably beautiful, earth-shatteringly transformative. So we have a grid around us that controls how energy comes into our personal life, our our consciousness, our personal sphere. How would I say this? There's an infinite grid of consciousness around us, and then around our bodies we have a protective ovum that regulates how energy from that grid comes into our life and dictates our perception. But it does that by condensing energy from the God grid through our assemblage point, which then goes into our perceptions. I hope that makes sense. So by moving our assemblage point, because the assemblage points can move, you can start for instance, when you experience Kundalini, the assemblage point moves to a completely different position and starts taking in energy from completely different filaments of the God grid than it did before. And because of that, your consciousness changes. Because of that, you can now see the truth, ladies and gentlemen. The assemblage points in our energetic field can actually move. When you dream, your energetic, or when you experience dreaming, your assemblage point has moved to a new position. When you experience lucid dreaming, your assemblage point moves to a totally foreign and new position. But we can learn through alchemy to start influencing our assemblage points to move when we're conscious. So the John Kreider breathing exercises, the in polarity, the void polarity, and the out polarity, the alchemical trinity that he talks about and gives you exercises on how to do those. He has the book Overcoming the Archon Through Alchemy. And in that book, ladies and gentlemen, he teaches you how to do alchemical breathing exercises so that you can start taking in energy from the world around you, integrating it into your energy field so that you can regenerate your energy field, and then you use the accumulated energy that you've stored in your body to fuel your life or fuel your magical work or terraform the world around you. It's a beautiful system. We can use the accumulated energy that we store from the in polarity to start to influence, ladies and gentlemen, our assemblage points. That's all I'm going to say for now. I don't have time to go off on a completely different rant about all this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, but we'll get into that in the near future. What a beautiful experience. The reality can be so beautiful. If we had our assemblage points in a position where we could understand the truth, we would be completely different species. Mark my words, a completely different species, ladies and gentlemen. There's no denying that. There's absolutely no denying that. I want to see the world change. I want to see humans change. I want to see myself change. I'm not acting like I'm some perfect human, but my God, compared to the typical human, I've got my head on very straight compared to the typical human. You can, when you get to a certain level of mental health, ladies and gentlemen, you can see the sickness around you very clearly. You can see the sickness around you. You can see that people are living in a very lulled state of consciousness. This is largely due to the positioning of their assemblage point and how it's fixed in that current position. Now, due to the fact that I've experienced Kundalini on a handful of occasions, due to the fact that I've experimented with a handful of different mind-altering techniques, you name it, that have moved my assemblage point has moved largely so many times that it's changed my life forever. I take in information from the outside world in a much different way than the average human. That's not a bragging right. That's nothing, far from it. It's just the truth. People who become conscious, ladies and gentlemen, and start to, do the exercises, who start to integrate energy into their lives and start to really evolve themselves, they start to move the positioning of their assemblage point, and in doing so, affect how their energetic field takes in information and feeds it into your mind. That changes how you see the world. That changes how you see the public, who are in a very fixed position. By default, you cannot not notice it. You can't just not notice the collective positioning of people's assemblage points. It's impossible. When you become conscious enough to, how would I put this, folks? When you become conscious and your metaphysical antennas start to go into their upright position and stop being in their downward position, when you start to feel and sense energy and are sensitive to energy, you will be able to see how the typical individual is in a very fixed position, mentally, emotionally, you name it, physically. They all kind of are similar in a very respective sense on the energetic level, and that's due to a very fixed positioning in their energetic field. So, just a brief little message here, just more of a rant, ladies and gentlemen. What a crazy fucking world. What a crazy world. I've seen visions of what this biosphere was designed to look like, which is basically an evolved version of Atlantis. totally fucking tropical and beautiful. Green technology everywhere. Personal evolution everywhere. Enlightened motherfuckers walking around everywhere in their Merkabas, creating universes and shit. Not going to 9 to 5 work, sitting in traffic. There's an energetic cocoon right now around the earth of negative energy from the collective suffering. This is not the way that Earth is. This is not the type of energy that Earth was designed to have saturated around it. This Earth was designed to be a platform for evolution, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you want to believe that or not, I don't give a damn. The truth is the truth, regardless of what people think. This is a nightmare scenario for those of us who have alchemically transmuted our minds and our bodies enough to be able to see past the control. When you can see past the control, it means that you can see obvious truths that are right beneath everybody's nose, and that is that the public has been turned into a collective zombie horde, a hive mind program. I'm not being negative by saying this. I'm saying these things because I care about humanity. I want to see humanity thrive. I want things to change for the better. I don't want to see humanity stuck in this pig pen, making decisions that they wouldn't be making if they had their heads screwed on straight. Our assemblage points need to move to new positions. Our energetic fields need to undertake a healing process, and we're not going to do that doing what we're doing, ladies and gentlemen. The way things are set up here in the Matrix right now is all about control. It is all about keeping consciousness steered in a very specific direction. It is all about keeping our energetic fields in a very fixed position so that you cannot see beyond the limitations of that fixed position. Because as I said in a recent video on the assemblage point, our assemblage points and our energy fields have aspects of them that act as a governor on a vehicle. I'm speaking in metaphors. A governor on a vehicle is a part of the car that keeps the car from being able to go over like a certain programmed speed. For instance, my mom's Honda Accord could only go up to 110 because it had a governor on it. When the governor was taken off, it could go past 110. The assemblage point in there's certain parts, not only is the assemblage point, but there's certain parts of our energy field, ladies and gentlemen, that acts as a governor. And instead of speed, the governor, our assemblage point in these parts of our energy field that acts as a governor, dictates consciousness and what we can perceive, not speed. Again, I'm speaking in metaphors. So our governor is a part of our energy field called the assemblage point, and there's other parts as well, but I'm not going to get into that now. But these parts regulate how our perceptions form. It regulates, ladies and gentlemen, how we see the world. And by moving the assemblage point, we can view that as removing the governor. And when we remove the governor, what do we do on the vehicle? Well, we can now go beyond the programmed limits that the governor gave the car. We can go past 110 or past 90 miles an hour. Or, in this case, speaking in metaphors, we can now perceive things much differently when our personal governors, our assemblage points, shift to a new position. Because by moving the assemblage point, which is like a vacuum that sucks in energy from the energetic grid around us, the God grid, it sucks energy in through our aura and into the assemblage point and then dictates how we see the world. When our assemblage points move to a new position, instead of their programmed positions that they're currently in now, we start to take in new forms of information from the God grid. These filaments and living intelligences feed themselves into our aura in a much different way, and we perceive we perceive the world differently now. So, mystical experiences are largely shaped due to the shifting of the assemblage point and the shifting of our energetic field. The reawakening or activity, if you will, of our energy field or our aura is the cause behind every single mystical experience ever, in my opinion. You can't have a mystical experience without the energy field allowing you to experience those mystical experiences. All states of gnosis are driven by certain biological and physiological and arcane properties within our overall makeup becoming online and moving to new positions that allow us to see things differently. I hope that makes sense. So I really want to hit home here with the fact that the Matrix exists to keep you controlled. And the greatest way to control a species is to regulate the information coming into that species' personal sphere, that dictates how they see the world. Because if you can control the force or if you can control the way people view the world, or a species views their reality, you can control them. You can control them. So there's a handful of different factors that are working against us at any given time, ladies and gentlemen, but we can, easily shift everything through alchemy and personal self-love by taking care of ourselves through what we eat, by doing the full body exercises that I talk about, the full body relaxation exercises. We can shift things for our favor immediately. We don't have to let this fucking system eat us alive. We don't have to let stress consume us. We don't have to let all the predatory non-organic beings consume us from the inside out, just through, feeding off of our energy. We can take power into our own hands. We can say no to the bullshit and do everything that we can to become greater, happier, healthier, more vibrant and illuminated versions of ourselves. My battery's running low. Unfortunately, I wanted to go a lot further, but I can't with my low battery, and maybe we'll make this a multi-part series just talking about mind control, energy fields, and the truth of reality. I love you all, and until next time, peace be with you.